Today we have the second session of show and tell, and here's our list of presenters for today. I want to thank them all for the work they've done to prepare their presentations. Each one has 3 minutes. We got a little behind last time because a lot of people went over, so I'm going to be a little more forceful today. I have 2 co-hosts, Melinda Chabelle and Roz Ray, and they will be monitoring the chat. They've also been wonderful members of the steering committee for this virtual parley. Logistics reminders, I think everybody's onto this. Presenters, you're the ones who need to be very careful. So we will start by actually going back to something from yesterday. Donna Clem had showed us this puzzle that she wondered if it was really the left half or the entire puzzle. And in fact, it turns out to be a pastime puzzle. The Grand Canyon of the Colorado, and the diagnostics for a pastime are, they used a certain set of figure pieces in a lot of their puzzles. They gave the cutters templates. So the polar bear, the arrow, the pear, and the eagle are down here in the lower right-hand corner, are pretty diagnostic for a pastime. Now, next I'm going to turn it over to Bruce. And Bruce, if you have audio problems, just let me know and Roz will continue.
Okay.
Bruce Whitehill is the founder of the Association of Game and Puzzle Collectors, which is now the AGPI, and he comes to us from Germany. Go ahead, Bruce.
Okay. Hi, I'm Bruce Whitehill, and I don't make puzzles. I write the stories for mystery jigsaw puzzles, and I collect mechanical and jigsaw puzzles. The International Puzzle Party, IPP 28, was held in 2008 in Prague. The wife of Bill Cutler, the designer of the Czech Farms puzzle you were about to see, is of Czechoslovakian ancestry. So Bill wanted his souvenir puzzle to reflect that. Janice was raised on a dairy farm in northern Wisconsin, and the barn on the farm was built by her grandfather. And the barn pictured on the pieces is a close approximation of the existing barn on the dairy farm owned by Janice's parents. The puzzle's silos are different, but that was the poetic license Bill said was necessary to create the different pieces. Janice's grandparents and her parents have milked cows and stored crops in this barn for over 80 years. Zemanek, the family name, is a Czech name meaning little farmer. Next. The puzzle consists of 25 pieces of 6 different shapes. Next slide. Each piece shows a barn and a silo or a tractor or both. There are 2 different sizes of silos and 2 different sizes of tractors. These pieces can be put together in many configurations, but the objective is to pack the 25 pieces into a circle, approximately 6.5 inches, 16.5 centimeters in diameter. When solved, the edge of the circle is irregular, but there should be no empty spaces in the interior. Next. Bill told me that when he and his wife arrived in Prague for the IPP, they met new relatives and were given a tour of the farm and village where Janice's grandfather grew up. There was a wedding-like reception for the couple and their children in the family-owned tavern at the center of the small town. Czech Farms was Bill Cutler's exchange puzzle, and it was made by Walt and Chris Hoppy. In the mechanical puzzle category, it is classified as a 2D packing puzzle. I thank Bill for all the information he sent me and for designing this interesting puzzle, which I now have in my collection. And I thank you all.
Okay, so thanks, Bruce. Do we have any questions for Bruce, Melinda?
No, there are no questions. People really liked it. It's a very nice puzzle. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
If questions come in later, we can come back to them. Our next presenter is Jean Spicer. Jean is coming to us from Massachusetts. She's been a collector for a long time. Jean, could you unmute yourself and take it away, please?
Yes, this puzzle is a Holtzoffel puzzle, which is a British puzzle, which in fact I think in Britain is comparable to what Par puzzle is in the United States. It's the top of the line. In fact, I think to the majesty they are given. It is called a figure it out puzzle, which means that it's a soldier. They do the figure it out puzzles, which are actually shapes. This one has 125 mahogany pieces. It was done between 1910 and 1920, and I'm thrilled to have it because, in fact, finding a figure it out Holtzoffel is impossible on eBay. I can never afford them. This one turned up, and it was a buy it now, and it was very inexpensive. And it turned out it was a woman who owned a china shop who somehow got a hold of this puzzle and put it on. She didn't think it was worth anything and put it on for a very low price. So I'm very pleased to have it. I think it all tells the rest of it. It's called a soldier counting, and it is 125 pieces. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. I love the figure it out puzzles. Holtzoffel, by the way, started out as a maker of knives, and that continues to be their main product. But
Right.
For some reason, they got into making jigsaw puzzles in the early 20th century. Do we have any questions, Melinda, for Jean?
We have one, although I think you've answered it in this slide. It was, how old is it? It looks like it's 1910 to 1920.
Yes, it's very old. In fact, I've never seen this particular box before. I have a lot of Holtzoffels, and this box is very different. So I think it's much older than the other boxes that I have.
Okay, well, moving right along, our next presenter is Michael Card. He is also from Massachusetts.
Thanks. Can you hear me?
And Michael, take it away.
Okay, thank you. Well, one of the messages this weekend that really has resonated with me is the idea of cooperation and collaboration versus competition. That was, I guess, Paige Elliott's philosophy, and that certainly is my philosophy too. As a longtime collector, I really yearned for a place online where I could share photographs, information about my collection and just about puzzles in general. And I finally found that place about a decade ago on Flickr.com. I use the name Billsville Mike as my name on Flickr, and you can Google Billsville Mike and find over 1,000 of my photos and tens of thousands of photos from lots of people all over the world who are really passionate about this hobby. One of the things over the years, there are groups on Flickr, there are albums, but one of the things that the groups have done is we put together what we call a group project, where we find a puzzle where many of us have the same copy of, and we work on it contemporaneously, not so much as a race, but as a shared experience. We took this concept a step further when I discovered the amazing cutting of Jeunesse de Fosse from France, who is a contemporary cutter. He is inspired by, I think, the French style of cutting with intensive color line cut, push fit pieces, often with an interlocking border in the style of Vera, Michel Wilson, Jeux Artistiques, etc. I think Jeunesse takes that concept a little further, often choosing very elaborate images, choosing a very playful style, and also adapting his cutting style when color line cutting isn't particularly effective in a certain image. So what we did was three of us decided to put together a secret group project by commissioning from Jeunesse to stack cut 3 copies of an image of his choosing. And all we gave him for parameters was just make it big and make it difficult. I got a copy, Jackie Armstrong from the UK got a copy, and Bob Beal from Portland, Oregon got a copy. This was 2019. we worked on the puzzle. We had no image or title or anything to go by. We worked on the puzzles, and then we posted on Flickr when everybody was finished, our impressions, our progress photos. As you can see, it's the color line cutting here is amazing. The linear style of this Renaissance work by Francesco del Costa doesn't necessarily lend itself to being a very difficult puzzle, but the way in which Geneste cuts very square-shaped pieces in this instance, and also a non-interlocking border, made it extremely difficult. It took me a little over 40 hours to finish. There's lots more to say and lots more to see, but if you Google Billsville Mike, you can find all sorts of stuff about puzzles on Flickr. Thank you.
Thanks. That's really a gorgeous puzzle. Did you have another picture there?
I submitted 3. I think there might be at least one more.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are some
This
details.
shows the color line cutting down here very well.
Yeah.
Roz, do we have any questions for Mike?
The only question was, where does Mike share his images? And that's been answered by Chris and Billsville Mike on Flickr. But there are many, many comments about how extraordinary this cutting is and what a beautiful puzzle he shared with us. Thank you very much.
Thank
Great.
you.
Okay, next up we have Caroline Mack, who was unable to be with us today. So Roz will be presenting her puzzle. And go ahead, Roz.
Yeah, I'm happy to do this for Caroline Mack. I will read what she submitted to us. I started cutting stand-up wooden jigsaw puzzles in 1970 when my husband gave me a Dremel Moto saw. I began by using published patterns from how-to books. I had one book with interesting scroll saw puzzle patterns, Cheshire Cat, Swiss cheese moon, with mouse, and more. I made puzzles for fun and gave them to family members. When my son was a junior in high school and went to birthday parties, he would give a painted puzzle that could be hung on the wall. He often commented, "The only reason I'm invited to the parties is because they want a wooden puzzle." At festivals, I would look longingly at all that I saw made with scroll saws. I received a 26-inch scroll saw in April of 2006, and I just wanted to cut puzzles. Included were simple children's puzzle patterns in a holiday pattern book with a 5-piece birthday cake. It was to be painted on both sides. It had a hole drilled in the top of the candle so it could hang as well as sit on a shelf. I changed the pattern. I thought, so why use a pattern? Now I look for new ideas. I saw this running shirt with an original design by my friend, cartoonist Dana Summers. I copied the design from the t-shirt with his permission. Dana is a marathon runner, and my husband and I have run many races with him. Next slide. I made my 26.2 miles puzzle in 2013. It has 84 pieces. I gave it to Dana as a birthday gift. I cut the puzzle from 1-inch thick plywood so that it is freestanding and colored on both sides. Next slide. Nope, other way. The frame was a second thought after the puzzle was completed, and there it was laying on a scrap pile talking to me. I love the process of making freestanding puzzles colored on both sides. And that's all she has to say.
All righty. Melinda, I know Caroline's not here to answer, but have any comments come in?
No, everybody thought it was really nice, and certainly I'm impressed that she did such a job with inch-thick pieces. We are running a little ahead, and I wonder if we could go back to a couple of questions for Bruce if he's around.
Bruce, are you still there?
I'm still here, yes.
Okay, we had 2 questions for you. One of them was someone asked how long it took you to put it together.
Well, people have to remember that I'm a games person more than a puzzle person. So after an hour of all sorts of different configurations, I looked online and found the solution. I
Ah.
have no idea how long it would take one of you guys to do this.
And do you have any insight as to how he generated the artwork for the puzzle?
Only what I explained from his viewing the barn of his in-laws, basically, and getting an idea that he'd like to do something that represents that when he visits them in Czechoslovakia, where this puzzle party was held.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you. Now we will move on to Amy Finley Scott from New York City. And Amy, could you tell us, I'm sorry, I left your middle name out of the title.
That's okay.
Could you tell us about your artwork and your puzzles?
Thank you. I started making puzzles because I have a really tiny kitchen. To explain, I was planning my first Christmas dinner working from my minuscule New York City kitchen. The organization was tight, the logistics daunting. What to do about an overlong wait at the table while I washed all the dinner dishes to use again for dessert? The idea came to me late on Christmas Eve, a puzzle. Using materials at hand in my studio, I drew with oil crayons on 1/4-inch plywood the image, the dessert we were going to eat. Early Christmas morning, I cut the puzzle into push-fit pieces with a handheld coping saw. Thus began the tradition of halftime Christmas dinner jigsaw puzzles cut with a coping saw for the first 8 years. Next slide. The composition for the 2019 puzzle, which is this one, features large numerals for the year with 2 birds, a turtle, leaves, and berries. I wanted this puzzle to be dimensional. Shapes were cut from 1/8-inch plywood and glued onto 1/4-inch ply. The shapes were stained in shades of red before gluing. The stain process was done with the oil paints, painted on and wiped off to minimize drying time and leave the wood grain visible. Sorry. Gluing the shapes down is tricky. You must use enough glue and not too much. The collage shapes also present challenges for cutting, now with a scroll saw. This puzzle has no figurals. My monogram piece, I don't know that you can see it, it's in the lower right, and it has a shaped edge. Next. My next puzzle is Lily. This composition was inspired by my own pen on paper continuous line drawings. There are 2 continuous lines here. First, the inner square frame, which becomes the drawing of abstract lilies ending as the statement. And 2, the decorative coiling line around the border. I painted this with oil paint on 1/4-inch 5-ply birch plywood. The color gradations of the continuous lines are a subtle guide to assembling the puzzle. Again, there are no figurals in this puzzle. My monogram piece is in the lower right. There are 9 asymmetrical notches around the edge. This was painted in 2018 and cut in 2019. Thank you.
Amy, you're one of a kind puzzles. They're so beautiful. I just love mine. Now,
Thank you.
I just don't have to brag there. Roz, do we have any questions or comments for Amy?
We have many comments, most of them that they are just in awe of both the design and the cutting of these puzzles. And could you repeat again whether the puzzles were done during Christmas Eve or Christmas dinner, and how that tradition started?
Well, it started because my kitchen was so small and I had to keep guests occupied while I was washing dishes. So I kept my guests occupied, and it continues to this day between dinner and dessert on Christmas. These The lily puzzle is not one of the Christmas puzzles, but the 19 was 2019 Christmas puzzle. And now that they're complicated, there are more pieces. I do them with the scroll saw. I divide the puzzle into sections because otherwise we would never get to eat dessert. So I divide the guests into teams of 2 or 3 people, and I give them only 25 or 30 pieces each. And the groups get very competitive. And as soon as one group yells that they finished, they win another section to do. And eventually all the sections are put together. And then we have dessert.
That is a wonderful story. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Okay, great. Now we're going to move on to John Roush, who's coming to us from Illinois with another story about an international puzzle party puzzle. John, are you there?
I'm here. Can you see me? I'm not
Yes.
a big Zoom person.
I can see you.
Okay. I'm primarily a mechanical puzzle collector, have been for more than 30 years, and attend the IPPs that Bill mentioned. Know Bill Cutler very well. I do also have several jigsaw puzzles. I like to work them and only keep a very few puzzles that I've acquired, almost all of them hand cut. This turned up a few years ago at one of our parties made by a Japanese fellow by the name of Yu Osaka. And if you go to the cover of the box here, you can see some of the pieces. Slip to the next slide, Ann, please. Okay, so here are the pieces, and if you count them, there are 29 pieces, and I've assembled 10 of the pieces into what one would normally think a puzzle that has this type of shapes would go together. And you would look at that and say, well, I think I need 25 pieces to fill this puzzle. Well, there's 29. It is a very difficult puzzle. It uses cut techniques that I have never seen before, and no one that at the puzzle parties had ever seen before. Most people take at least a couple of hours to solve this puzzle, I think. He also did another one called Jigsaw 19, which uses different tricks, but they're a lot of fun to play with, and are also nice to give to somebody who's used to solving normal jigsaw puzzles and watch them struggle. Any questions?
Any questions, please, Melinda?
I couldn't hear that.
We do not have any questions. Oh, yes, we do have a questions. Can you elaborate on the cutting technique, and is that translucent acrylic?
It is it's translucent or transparent, whatever you want to call it. Acrylic. It was laser cut. It was, designed on a computer and then laser cut to fit the tray.
Could you show the name of the cutter, the designer again? I think it was the first slide. If you could go back a couple. There we go. Someone asked about that.
Well, if you're interested in this, all you really need to know is the last name, Asaka, and his puzzles are available on puzzlemaster.ca. Puzzlemaster, all one word, .ca. I think they're about $35 Canadian, which is fairly reasonable.
You've answered another question of ours. And do you have a photo of the completed puzzle?
Oh, no, we would never show you a photo of the completed puzzle. No.
Okay,
no.
well, that's a challenge to all of us. Thank you, John.
Pardon me, that's a what?
A challenge to all of us.
Well, that's the whole idea, is that it's a
Right.
challenge puzzle, not something that's pretty when you get finished.
So next, we're moving on to Joe Seymour, who's also a member of the steering committee, and he's going to tell us about his Victorian era English puzzle. Joe is a longtime collector and puzzle crafter. And Joe, are you there? Can you go ahead, please?
Yes, thank you, Ann. And while everybody looks at this box lid for a moment, I'm going to make a couple quick comments. First is, the puzzle that Bruce showed. He did, when he was trying to struggle with it, or was struggling with it, he actually sent me a picture of it disassembled, which the picture he showed in the slide, I actually printed that out and cut it up into paper pieces and attempted to solve it, but did not get very far. My other comment was Holtzapfel. You mentioned the Holtzapfel making knives, and I do have a puzzle in my collection where they, on the label, on the box and the label, it says that this company makes farm implements, lawnmowers, and jigsaw puzzles. So another strange one. Anyways, I've got this puzzle up here, the box lid up, because I bought it some time ago, and I'm hoping someone can identify it. Maybe some of our folks in the BCD or folks in England might recognize this, but there is no name on the puzzle. There is no name on the image. And so I do not know who the maker of this was. The events depicted in this puzzle all occurred in 1879 and 1882. And by this time, almost all makers were clearly identifying or labeling their dissections with their names. The Barfoots were a notable exception, but Linda Hannes, the author that Ann has mentioned previously, Linda Hannes has no record of Barfoots producing puzzles in the 1880s. Next slide, please. All right, so you're looking at Prince Albert Edward and his two sons. The elder of the two boys died from disease in 1892. After the death of his father, who succeeded Queen Victoria in 1901, the younger boy ascended the throne as King George V and reigned from 1910 to 1936. He was Queen Elizabeth's grandfather. And King George is a name that puzzle collectors should recognize. John Spilsbury was apprenticed to the royal cartographer to King George IV. Anyways, as a young boy, he and his brother served in the Navy and went on an around the world trip. Almost all the scenes here in this image are from the departure. Almost every one of these scenes actually shows His Royal Highness and two women, his wife and daughter, in the background here. In the background, maybe grayed out, but other times the women's dresses are colored. But in the very last image down in the lower right-hand corner is actually showing them giving gifts on their return. So the ship was launched in 1879 and they returned to England in 1882. In the main scene, the blue flag with the white square in the center is actually a signal to the ship, or actually a signal flag that signifies return to ship, readying to sail. It's a universal signal flag, and so that again tells me this image was taken at the departure, not at the return. In the main scene, the blue and white flag, blue, white, and red flag with the stripes on actually just indicates His Royal Highness's German ancestry or royal ancestry associated with Germany. The two flags at the top both signify that His Royal Highness is aboard the ship, which they're just would place there while he was there visiting. And of course, in the lower corner is they're raising the Blue Peter. So, and then the inset in the lower corner here is actually just to show you that this is a hand tinted puzzle. So produced somewhere in the 1880s. Made from printed from an engraving and then hand tinted. And if anybody can tell me who might be the manufacturer, I'd love to know. Thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Roz, has anyone given us an answer to Joe's question?
They have not, and there are no questions for Joe at this point. We thank him for answering some other questions from earlier on.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. And now we have Claire Schaefer, or is it Schaefer, Claire?
Yeah, it's Schaefer.
Okay, thank you. And she's going to show us she made very recently. Claire's in France and is the head of a puzzle group there.
So hi, everybody. My name is Claire Schaefer, and I am an American, but I live in Paris. And I just recently started making puzzles in December and January. So I'm still kind of exploring with different materials and techniques. I've tried plexiglass and MDF and plywood and UV printing and silk screening and spray painting and all that good stuff. And at one of the fab labs that I use in Paris, I ran across a girl who was making objects with this really beautiful material, and it turned out to be recycled plastic. So she was able to show me how to grind down plastic and melt it to make my own plastic sheets. And this is some photos of what that looks like. And depending on how long you melt it and at what temperature, you can get really different textures on that. And Anne, if you could go to the next slide. So this is the puzzle that I made. The concept, this is just a prototype, was what if all the pieces are edge pieces? And this plastic actually comes from recycled 3D printing objects. So it's called PLA, and it is 100% safe to laser cut. And the edges do get a little bit melty, but it's a material that's easy to work. You can sand it down or drill it and stuff. So one of the reasons I wanted to show this puzzle is I was actually wondering if there are some hand cutters that would be interested in trying out this material. I would love to make some sheets and ship them off to people because I think the material is really sturdy and beautiful and fairly easy to work. So that's about it for this puzzle. I also wanted to mention that I am opening a board game cafe in Paris in October, and there will be puzzles, both cardboard and wooden. So if any of you are ever in Paris, please let me know. I would love to get together to puzzle. Thank you.
Claire, thank you. And did you use a saw or a laser to cut this?
Oh, this is a laser cut puzzle. I don't know how to hand cut.
Well, it's really a great way to recycle stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Any questions for Claire?
Everybody says it's really cool. It's cool. Wow, love it. And when you offered to send people some of the material, we got quite a few yes. So I think if you would perhaps put your email in the chat room, that would be great. Someone wanted to ask how thick is the plastic?
You can get it down to different thicknesses, usually around 3 millimeters.
Okay, thank you. Wonder if it melts the blade as it passes through. That was another person's question.
I have to try it
But this
out.
is laser cut, right?
Yeah, this is laser cut, so it works fine with laser cut. I don't know what it would give with a scroll saw.
Well, thank you. And our next up, we have Pete Day from England. And Pete is very active in the BCD.
Hello, hi.
Yeah, I'm trying to,
Can you hear me there?
We can hear you.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is a bit of a contrast. So this is, okay, a bit of a contrast. Hi, everybody. Oops, back again. So thanks, I'm just glad to be here. First Puzzle Parley I've been to. I've heard a lot about it from somebody you'll know well, but sadly no longer with us, Terry Walters, Grandpa TJ, who told me a lot about the Puzzle Parley when I met him at a lot of BCD meetings. I started collecting wooden puzzles about 10 years ago, and through them developed quite an interest in history, particularly, you know, Empire, British history, Victorian, Edwardian history. And I've got quite a lot of World War I puzzles. My grandfather was wounded on the first day of the Somme. He was a machine gunner and he survived the first day of the Somme. So I've got a particular interest in World War I. And this is one of my favorite World War I puzzles. It's called Broke. I like it because it's push fit, color line cut, difficult to do. There's about 700 pieces you can see there, and it shows the allies on the far side of the table, death as the roulette, as the croupier, and the Axis central powers on this side of the table. I've got two versions of this puzzle. Next slide. This is one which, this is the first one I bought, which is only got 400 pieces, but also quite tricky. And the person I bought it off on eBay had put these numbers on. She sent me this, put the numbers on to try and identify who all the people were. And at present, we've got about 10 definite and 10 maybes. If anybody's interested in filling the gaps in, let me know and I can send you this. On the far side, the three main characters, 8, 9, 10, is the Tsar Nicholas is 8, 9 is Poincaré, the French leader, 10 is George V. And this side, 23, looking a little bit Japanese, is the Crown Prince Wilhelm, Kaiser Bill 24, his son, and 26 is Hindenburg, who led the Imperial Army. Next slide. The cartoon was put together by Bert Thomas, who was a political cartoonist, did lots of cartoons for Punch and the London Opinion, satirical magazines in the early 20th century. And it was his most famous cartoon was Half a Mo Kaiser, which, as you can see there, was used to raise funds for the troops. It was also used in the Second World War as Half a Mo Hitler. The Germans didn't like that, banned Half a Mo Hitler, and so he renamed it Are We Downhearted, so that the prisoners of war could get their comfort packages through to them okay. That's it. Sorry, Anne, for 15 seconds overdue.
Oh, no problem. Do we have any questions for Pete?
There were no questions that have come in yet.
Okay, great. We'll move on to Jackie. Jackie has a great puzzle for us. Jackie Armstrong, no relation to Bob or Conrad, by the way. And go ahead, Jackie.
Hi. Everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yep.
Right. Yep. Thank you for the opportunity to show this jigsaw and to tell you about the Grandpa TJ project. I first met Terry in person at a BCD house party where I gave him a poster to cut. In September 2017, I received an assembled 800-piece jigsaw measuring 19 by 9 inches. The cutting was an astonishing tour de force with 4 levels. When I took it apart, I found that very few of the pieces were interlocking. The rest were push fit and quite extreme, up to 40 millimeters deep, some only trinkets, and only 2. I think somebody needs to mute. Okay, they were difficult to lay out on trays. Next, please. Here is the completed jigsaw. This is The Summons by Burne-Jones, the first of 6 tapestries made by Morris & Co. to illustrate the Grail quest from Le Morte d'Arthur. William Knox Darcy commissioned the first tapestry set in 1890 for Stanmore Hall. You can see my progress shots in a Flickr album. The jigsaw is accurately and wickedly colour line cut down to the level of the bread roll, and the heads, all of them, are dissected. When I was doing this, I started with the small interlocking pieces, then moved on to the thick push fit sections. Eventually, I had to forge these into a 4-level scene without an image. The table area is very complex. The chairs were a nightmare, and even deciding which head sat where wasn't easy. Next, please. My last photo shows the 4 levels. The tallest level is the floral ground and the roof tiles, the damsel and the horse just off the screen. The next level contains pillars and the 5 front chairs. The 3rd level fills in behind with bits of the floor, the table and the back row of people. You can just see the 2-piece scepter, which is astonishingly thin. the jigsaw pushes the limits of what is possible for a 3D enhanced cutting. The Grandpa TJ project aims to create a list with photos of all the jigsaws that Terry cut. It stands at 121, plus Paige Elliott exchange duplicates, covering some 90 images. Who knows, there may be up to 50 more. The data I've collected is published on Flickr. A huge thank you to everyone who has helped already. And for the other people, please check the list and contact me if you have some glaring omissions. Thank you.
Jackie, thank you. Could you post your Flickr album main URL on the chat, please?
Yes,
and,
I'll get David to do that.
And do we have any questions for Jackie?
We do not. We have a lot of comments about, wow, beautiful, awesome, so unique, exciting. And I have to add to that I was so fortunate at the last Puzzle Parley that I bought 2 of his puzzles.
Oh, wonderful. Okay,
yes.
Now we're going to
Melinda shared it with me.
There is one question here. Does the lower layers have their own image, or is it the same as the upper layers?
Right, the layers themselves, they're the top surface for everything. What Terry does is he cuts a thick stack of different levels of ply in one go, and then he slides layers in and out so that he gets the best perspective. So there's only one image concerned, and it's on the top when it's cut, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you.
Okay, next we have Mark Cole. Mark is in Ontario, Canada. And Mark, please go ahead.
Hi, greetings from Canada. This is a really new venue for me, so I'm excited to participate. For background, I design and laser cut all sorts of wooden and acrylic games and puzzles for all ages. I've been doing this for about 3 years as a hobby, and I sell my creations at local farmers markets. I'm a member of my local makerspace for artisans where I print and do the laser cutting. My newest creations are, I call transformative art puzzles. Basically, these are magnetic puzzles to hang on a wall that owners then can take down when their friends come over to reassemble and entertain themselves. These puzzles are for both kids and adults. Next, please. I'll describe my multi-step process. And it basically takes a bit of a time to actually create any one of these puzzles. So the first thing I do is I find an interesting image, whether it's going to be for adults or kids. I get the image digitally printed onto a 1/8 inch white MDF. The maximum size of the laser cutter I use would be 24 by 18 inches, so I make the puzzle slightly smaller than that. I use Corel Draw, and I design different cut files for each puzzle. These cut files will make for, something they'll make for interesting or challenging puzzle pieces, and usually following natural color line breaks. I laser cut the board into puzzle pieces. And the next step is to create a frame. So I laser cut a 2-piece frame with optional etching of either text or graphics. I manually cut a sheet of magnetic substrate as the backing for the frame, which then I glue and trim onto the frame's base. I paint and glue the frame so that each frame is unique. Then I'll etch an adhesive magnetic sheet to fit the puzzle pieces, because you can't actually really cut rubberized magnetics. Quite messy, unless you buy the expensive kind, which I haven't done yet. Then I manually tear or cut the magnetic backing and apply to each of the backs of the pieces. This is actually the most time-consuming part. And for any puzzle, it'll take anywhere from half an hour to an hour to complete the puzzle. I add a string for hanging, which I'll actually buy myself. And I shrink wrap the puzzle for sale at the farmer's market. That's pretty well it. And thank you. I hope everybody stays safe. Oh, forgot the last slide. Thanks.
Oh, wow, those are quite impressive, Mark. And what kind of questions have turned up for Mark or comments?
A lot of comments saying very cool, fun stuff, fond of the idea of magnetic puzzles, and that takes care of it for today.
So Roz, I think
Thank
we're
you.
pretty close to our closing time, is that correct?
We are right on our closing time, yep.
Okay, so let me just finish by thanking everyone, both the presenters and to the audience for all your insightful questions and helpful comments. I hope these 2 sessions of show and tell will inspire more of you to present some of your special puzzles at future parleys or future show and tells. And do remember, please, that we always welcome volunteers to help with large pieces of our parley organization or small pieces. Now, Joe, would you mute everybody and then we can proceed?